motivation of getting the contract, but there's also just a mountain of experience that you reach some kind of pinnacle of, and you're like, oh, wow, I know what I'm doing now. And it feels like Montez very much is in that mode, both in watching him on the field. And, I wasn't around a lot last year for a lot of the press conference stuff. You were around more. I thought his press conference, it was like the most comfortable and relaxed that I'd seen Montez sweat in front of a microphone in 4 years. And I just think that, not that that's to place too much importance on it, and especially because that becomes self-importance because we're in the media, but like there's a comfort level there that I think is meaningful. What were your impressions of that part of Sweat and just kind of seeing where he's at and the piece that he seems to be having right now, and obviously what you've seen on the practice field?
Well, yeah, the last part about the press conference, I thought the exact same thing. I've never heard him this relaxed, and he was funny, he's thoughtful. He just wasn't just going through the motions like some guys tend to after these things. You don't blame him. It's kind of like I just went out here for 2 hours and read code red air quality, and I got to do this. But he was
code
good.
Orange. We don't want the Commanders yelling at us.
Everybody else in code red, but anyway. The NFL's not. Anyhow, the funny part I thought today was like, because again, there's been so much emphasis on, hey, what do you got to do to finish on these plays, and like, so what are the steps, and to learn all this. Has been like a lot of talk between talking about Del Rio to Rivera about this, and Montez goes, I just got to get the dude on the ground. Like, I just got to get the dude down. Like, that's really okay. Yeah, that sums it up. I thought that was funny, but then in practice, obviously, he blew up a lot of plays. I don't know if you caught this last night. I think we might have discussed it. Albert Breer had this amazing tweet about Chase Young yesterday, and a lot of our eyebrows raised. Like, I didn't even know Albert Breer was at practice. Well, because he wasn't. But it was fascinating because clearly he had been talking to somebody who was watching, and they were really blown away by Chase. And a lot of us were like, yeah, he did some okay things yesterday, but I mean, it wasn't like they really went after it like they did today. Now, after today's practice, if I was going to do a promotional tweet for a player who was in a contract year, it would be for Montez Sweat. So hopefully his agent has reached out to some national media folks, because he's the guy that was flying all around. You're like, wow, and I get it. He's not coming off, a knee injury that slowed his season last year either. But as you said, it seems like he's the guy on schedule, I think, in front of the line. If we're having a pecking order right now, that is in the spot, I believe, to get that deal. And he did nothing today that suggested that he wasn't well aware of what this season means. He mentioned it a couple times, and they asked him about Jerron Payne. He also talked about how he really enjoyed being out here with the guys today. But he's got his own process, and it had nothing to do with business. Like, if people, is he doing it because of contract year? And it's like, no, it's they're voluntary. I chose to do different places, different workouts. But this was great to be here today. So be fascinated to see if he sticks around, if they do that Tuesday, the standalone Tuesday next week, if he stays for that or not. But I feel good about what he showed today, and there was definitely a difference in the way the offense and defense, played 11-11 today, even though they, couldn't tackle.
Yeah, I think especially if the air quality is an issue, there's going to be a lot of third string, fourth string guys that get a lot of work next week, that singular day. I did think it was interesting. So I asked Montez in that press conference, what's the difference in the work you get here versus when you're away, and why did you feel like the work away was the best thing for you at this time? And he basically said the biggest difference is being around. You get to be around your teammates, and I love that. So this week has been great, but other than that, it's not that different. Which makes you go like, well, they want to just be around your teammates. And I'm not saying that to be like critical. I'm saying that with like that's. If they're the same, and then this thing over here has this other thing that you really like, why wouldn't you do the extra thing that you like? Clearly, there's obviously a little bit more to that answer. But I did find that kind of interesting that, it seems like whatever work Chase and Montez were doing, some of it apparently together away from the team, was structured very similarly to a lot of the stuff that they are doing here. Obviously, a lot of it's individual work, and they're doing a lot of individual work in these practices because they're doing so much, for linemen especially, because they're doing so much passing game work. It's something that I've talked about a little bit, Scott, on the show, of like, I actually don't really have as much of a problem with it, especially for Montez. One, they're voluntary and sure, fine. But when it comes to how do they become the best football players, I actually think for Montez, like, he might be at the point with his skill set and his career and his knowledge base that he gets to do hey, I'm a super special athlete who can benefit from some specialized training that's not what I'm going to get in a gigantic group setting, as opposed to Chase from like, yes, you are also a super special athlete, but I think you need the team environment, the team reps, the team knowledge, the team meetings more because you're not sitting on 3 years of experience. You're sitting on one change and a lot of rust between that.
Yeah, I think it's a fascinating thing because I'm all for, hey, these are voluntary. You should respect that. I really wish the NFL would get rid of the gray area and the PA just sit down and say, hey, we're going to have days you have to be there, and then there's nothing. You know what I mean? And then you can keep the weight room open. And we stop taking attendance because it just causes this back and forth with fan bases and stuff about certain players. But I mean, think about it this way: if all the guys took it as to like, okay, it's voluntary, we don't need to be there. I mean, like Cam Curl, for example. He's in a contract situation. He could easily not be there. Now, he is there, and he's not doing all the team drills, obviously. He's kind of holding in, if you will, from that standpoint, which is his prerogative at this point, but he's still there. So, like, if everybody had that mindset, then these things would just not take place. I mean, clearly the rookies have no choice, it feels like. But, obviously some guys choose to do it, and it's important to them, and it works out well. I mean, we saw Trent Williams for years skip a lot of these and work out with Adrian Peterson and come in and ball out, was a Pro Bowler, all pro level. I mean, look, I can't be mad for Chase Young hanging out with Von Miller. I mean, I saw that last week. I was like, awesome. Perfect. Yeah. Talk to this guy more, spend more time with Von Miller. Like, that's great. So it is like it's that fine line. Like, I understand it, where they're coming from and why they don't feel like they have to be here, don't need to be here. Charles Leno, same thing. I get it because I do think it is kind of a creepy thing the NFL sticks on you. Hey, it's voluntary, and like mandatory, blended into each other. And we're okay if you're not being here, but we're really mad actually secretly, and we're going to make you pay for it if you play poorly. So it's that. And it does trickle into the fan base too. It's like, hey, if he has a great year, it's over. If either one of these guys has a bad year, first time they say, oh, there you go, he didn't want to be part of the OTAs, and now look at him, he's getting run on, or he's not getting the quarterback, or whatever it is, So I think that part of it's weird, but yeah, I mean, for him, he's always been, when he's been on the field, he's been pretty dang productive. He's just missing that next gear, right? Like, even if he were to even had a similar year to the years he's had in the past, I would still probably make a case to keeping him here. Now, obviously, the price would be different, but I still can understand his value. But I would, I do feel like he's one of these guys. If I had a bet on who's going to have the breakout year, I'd probably put my money on him.
Agreed. Scott Jackson with us here on the Hoffman Show for Not My Beat today. So I don't want the Emmanuel Forbes hype train to run away too fast because it's June 7th. But I've been very, very impressed with what I've seen from him. And it's not just kind of the ball hockey type of stuff that, the splash plays, which he's made a couple. I don't think he's had an actual interception yet, but he's got his hands on a couple balls. But his intelligence playing zone and the way he reads the field, I've been very impressed by that. What stood out to you about Forbes, whether it's that or another trait?
Well, definitely the ball hockey is obvious, right? But it is. I mean, because you see it, okay, it's college, blah, blah, blah. But then you see it out here. And again, I can check myself. These are drills. They know the ball's going to be thrown, those kind of things. But he doesn't get badly beat. There was a play yesterday where it was one of the ones. It might have been McLaurin, it might have been Dotson that did a stop and go on him, and he did initially bite. And he was gone behind him, and his recovery speed was incredible. And everybody oohed and awed on the defensive side, and everybody's like, "Wow, the recovery! Hey, good, you bit, but good recovery. You got it." And he has that. He's got to get his long. He's a long guy. He's very skinny. I mean, it's startling how skinny his legs are.
Yes,
there's no question about it. I don't even know. I hope he wears thigh pads during the season because if he doesn't, he's really going to look funny in those burgundy pants. But anyway, he's definitely got some skinny legs, but. He can get. I mean, again, as you saw it in college, like we don't see it out here. Obviously, he's not doing anything yet with the run game, but he does get in the run game. He's not scared to go in and help out in the run game. He got his head in there. He's very aggressive. I was surprised actually how aggressive he was, in the run game after hearing all the hype about he's this pick six machine and all this stuff. My guy's probably terrible in the run, but he wasn't. But yeah, that's the thing I saw. It's his instincts. It doesn't look like he gets fooled out there. And again, I get it. They're kind of got a feel probably now at this point what the offense is and what the routes are going to be. But that's been, I think, the encouraging thing for me about him. And, he's it's funny because everybody's like, Mississippi State, our background at Mississippi State here is Sweat, who's got a lot of swag. Obviously, Fred Smoot to go back in the day. And this guy is so quiet. But on the field, he's definitely got an air about him, right? Like he's definitely got a confidence about him for a rookie, but he's not like those guys.
It was funny. I talked to Quan Martin after practice today, and I asked him to compare like Devin Witherspoon and Forbes, and he goes, "Yeah, Spoon talks a little bit more." He's like, I think Emmanuel has a lot more of that in him, but Spoon definitely talks more. All right, last thing, complete left turn on the way out here.
Sure.
Michael Winger is going to get introduced tomorrow. We probably will hear from Will Dawkins, Ted Leonsis, Travis Schlenk as well. What do you like? They're not going to come out tomorrow and be like, Bradley Beal is on the market or anything.
They're going to say nice stuff. Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Right.
So, like, taking that fantasy land off the table, what is it like in terms of clarity? Again, I'm not advocating for any specific move, but realistically, what do you want to hear from any single one of them tomorrow?
Well, I mean, just that they have the autonomy to do what they think is right, which I think we all understand will probably be just based on these guys' backgrounds. They're not going to roll out the same thing over and over again. I think that's the thing. I think this has been significant, and yeah, we can nitpick and say, boy, it was 3 years too late or whatever. How many years do you think it is? 5 years, whatever. And that's fine. And that's all fair. But I think this is significant. This is the first hire on that level, first 3 hires now, for Ted Leonsis, both organizations, Wizards and Capitals. Remember, he just kept George McPhee, which is fine because George McPhee's very good, and he's still really good. Vegas Knights. And then promoted Brian McClellan. Kept Ernie when he first got the job, but, at that time, that made sense. And then when that ran its course, he used an outside firm to find a guy who was already in his office, which didn't make a lot of sense to a lot of us. Nothing against Tommy at that time, because I think Tommy, you could have made a case for him. I still think they should have gone with Tim Connolly. I don't know why they drug him out from Colorado just to lowball him or whatever they did, to turn him off from the job or not to offer or whatever the heck their version of it is. It was just a shame. But I think the thing is, that part of it, these guys have autonomy to do the things, even if it meant firing Wes Unseld, which I don't think they'll do, by the way. I don't think that's happening. I think he starts the season. There's no reason to do that. But just all those things that we just haven't seen here before, a developmental plan, because what they've done has been not good. Really diving into the international world. Yeah, they've taken some international players, but they've been kind of the obvious round one guys that they've done okay with. They've had ones in the past they've taken the second round that have never shown up here or done anything. So, those kind of things. And again, this all comes from these guys' backgrounds. If we went back and played the interview or the press conference after the Beal, max contract from the summer. I mean, boy, what a difference! What a turn we've made from there. Where they were like, yeah, we got the goods to be, a contender to where they are now, where looks like they're ready to, really tear this thing down and start from scratch in a sense.
Yeah, definitely. Where are you going to be tomorrow? Am I going to see you at Gallery Place, or are you going out to Ashburn tomorrow?
I'm probably going to do a little Ashburn. I will be, well, it depends. I mean, are they going to kick us out? Because if it goes in the bubble, it might be, might not be. Yeah. Might not be invited, so might have to go to Gallery Place. So we'll see. But I'll be with Brian Mitchell on Friday.
Nice. All right, so make sure you listen to Scott midday on Friday with B. Mitch over on 106.7 The Fan. Appreciate your time here today, sir.
All right, thank you.
It's the Hoffman Show on the Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app. Never read the comments coming up at 6 o'clock, so your last chance to get them in, youtube.com/@CraigHoffman or youtube.com/@the Team 980, where, of course, we are streaming live right now. Also right now, it is our pleasure to welcome in a good friend of the show who has not actually been on the show yet. This is a guy I've been having on for years, one of the smartest basketball analysts in the game. From Meadowlark Media, it is the great Tom Haberstroh. Tom, what's up, man? How are you?
Dude, it's great to be back on the show. I'm great.
I'm so glad to have you. So glad we could connect. I did not know when we did this and we scheduled this that it would come on the heels of breaking news. So before we get into the NBA Finals, what do you make of the fact that the Suns are going to waive Chris Paul?
It's a bit of a shock here, considering they're in win-now mode. They bring in Frank Vogel, obviously a guy with championship pedigree from the 2020 NBA Finals, as the head coach with Kevin Durant and Devin Booker. And now they waive him with half of his salary guaranteed. He had about $30 million next season. Guaranteed about 15 of that. So they were already anteed up to about $15 million. Might as well go whole hog and pay him the rest so that you can have him for a championship run. But they decide to part ways. And I can't imagine they're doing this because of financial reasons, because Matt Ishbia just took over the team and traded for Kevin Durant and basically decided, like, I'm remodeling the roster. We already have depth issues. We can't really afford to lose Chris Paul too. So to me, this says more about Kevin Durant and Devin Booker and whether they feel like he is an addition or a subtraction to the team and their championship hopes. So that it's a bit of a shock to me. And then secondly, you know, I think this might be a case where Chris Paul realizes at this point he can't be a 40-minute, 35-minute, 30-minute player and expect to last the required 100 games it would take to win a championship. So my first thought is Lakers. You know, they need a steady point guard. D'Angelo Russell wasn't that guy. He and LeBron James are extremely close, obviously. And I think L.A. makes a lot of sense. But I'll throw another team at you, Craig.
Okay.
What about Memphis?
Ooh. That is super interesting. What's Tyus Jones' contract situation? Because he is so good and could be a starter somewhere. And if they can, you know, if he's on the way out, I don't know if he's a pending free agent. It feels like he would be hard to re-sign. And yeah, it's funny because I've asked people what do you think the best thing is for John Morant? And some people are like, to get the hell out of Memphis. And I guess the next best thing would be bringing a guy like Chris Paul to mentor him. That makes a lot of sense.
Especially because if you're talking about like a 30-game suspension, which is where people are expecting this to land,
yep,
you're going to need an extra body and you're going to need a mentor. Chris Paul has a history with Steven Adams, and you know my guy, Jake LaRavia, a Wake Forest dude, is also on the roster, can play a little bit of a kingmaker to make sure he comes with the Wake Forest guy. But I do think that John Morant, if the Memphis Grizzlies are going to keep him in the franchise, they got to do everything they can to get him right. And what better way to do that than to bring on a vet of vets in Chris Paul, who is the head of the Players Union, who's won gold medals, who's basically got a close relationship with everybody in the league. So to me, not only do you get to have a starter caliber point guard with Chris Paul, basically hold the fort until John Morant gets back, you also don't have to have him play 30 minutes a night in the postseason. You can have him be a super sub or, the two in closing lineups. So I think Chris Paul, I think that's a really interesting landing spot for him. But you're right. Tyus Jones, I said Tyus Edney. Tyus Jones.
That's a throwback.
That is a deep cut. Tyus Jones he's a great replacement for John Morant. He's under contract for the next 2 years or next season at about $14 million. So it wouldn't make sense from a financial standpoint because you're already committed to Tyus Jones. But I do think it would be worth kicking the tires on Chris Paul and Memphis for the simple fact that he might be the best ticket for you to get the most out of John Morant, even if it is just a 1 year or 2 year mentorship. That could be the difference between John Morant reaching that MVP caliber talent that he has and just bottoming out in the league.
Tom Haberstroh with us from Meadowlark Media. There's a bunch of great podcast work, great post-game show with Amin Elhassan on their digital channels as well that you can watch. I'm guessing you guys are doing one tonight right after the game?
Yeah, Amin Elhassan and I are going to do one. He's going to be live in Miami. I'll be at my HQ, on YouTube at Le Batard and Friends.
There you go. So that's where you can watch that. And again, check out the podcast, check out everything Tom does. But to that point, with Chris Paul here, just to kind of close off some thoughts, the financial part in Phoenix is fascinating to me because I was just quick twittering, right? But this opens up potentially the full mid-level for them. But would you rather have a player that caliber, full mid-level, or Chris Paul? I think I'd probably rather have Chris Paul. And the other thing too, Tom, is if they have that full salary to trade, they could bring back a $30 million player. Now they don't have that option. It just seems like waiving him is the oddest possible outcome here, even though I guess I get it because the salary was partially guaranteed. It just seems like not the best way and not the way most NBA teams would use the asset to, sorry, Chris Paul, to turn you into just your contract and an asset.
It is also bizarre from this standpoint of Kevin Durant forced his way to Phoenix.
Yeah.
Then he gets the coach fired, or I don't know if he does, but the coach is let go, Monty Williams, and then they get rid of one of the two stars that were already there. And so it just seems to me like there's a lot of collateral damage when you acquire Kevin Durant. Jacques Vaughn would agree with that when he was let go. It was just all of it just seems very bizarre because of the fact that you said he is at a cap number that would be great to acquiring a star in a trade. So even if you don't like Chris Paul as a long-term option there at point guard and for your championship hopes, you can certainly move him at that $30 million cap figure for an asset or a trade for a player. And so I think it's interesting from that standpoint too, that Phoenix decided, not only were we bringing in this new coach, we're getting rid of Monty Williams, who's close with Chris Paul. And the other thing is maybe LeBron and Chris are up to something here, because if you pair this with LeBron's very ominous quote after getting eliminated by a sweep saying, I'm thinking about my options this summer, whether I want to play again. And then the Kyrie Irving reaching out to try to court him to Dallas, even though Kyrie Irving's not even a Dallas Maverick right now. He's going to be a free agent. It just seems like there's a lot of smoke in the league, no pun intended, after today's events in New York. But it just seems like something is afoot in the league, and that's why Basketball Illuminati is super fun to work on because this is the craziest league, man. Like, I know the MLS just got Lionel Messi and Miami got Lionel Messi, but like the NBA, it never sleeps, man.
No, it is. It's such a great name for a podcast too, and sometime the places that Amin's brain goes, good luck keeping up with that. But like, it is the kind of thing where you're like, that's nuts, that'll never happen, and then something 5 steps crazier happens. And I do think that LA is super interesting to watch. CP and LeBron have wanted to play together forever because all those guys did. Him, Melo, Melo went there at the end of his career. All those guys, obviously D Wade had all the years in Miami with LeBron, with Bosh. But it also is a basketball fit, because that's the thing with Chris Paul is like, what's the kind of team that would want to acquire Chris Paul to potentially push them over the edge, give them another shot creator, give them someone who can manage a game in the playoffs, but not have to take on huge minutes. And it's like, well, Phoenix, they were the ones that let him go. LA does seem like a good fit there. I think Memphis is interesting. I'd have to do more thinking, and this happened 10 minutes ago, but I like where your head's at on the LeBron thing.
A couple other things: Boston, Philly, New Orleans, all need point guards, and they're all going to be championship contenders if their guys are healthy. So New Orleans is interesting because of the fact that, look, they need Zion to be healthy. They need him to get his stuff right in the way that CJ was brought in as partly a mentor for Zion Williamson. Same deal with Ja Morant. It's odd to think of that draft class with Zion and Ja Morant, that Chris Paul would need to be kind of the fatherly figure in that locker room to try to get them straight and be professional and get the most out of their careers. And Boston and Philly, I don't need to go into depth of why that makes a lot of sense. I'll just add that Daryl Morey acquired Chris Paul and was able to, get him as close to a championship before the Phoenix days, and thinks very highly of Chris Paul as a player. So I think Boston, Philly, Memphis, New Orleans, and the Lakers, and Clippers, maybe we'll see what happens with the Russell Westbrook situation. I could see that being very volatile with Russ and Chris Paul on the same roster. But those are the teams that jump to my mind at the top. I would say the Lakers are probably the favorite to get them.
I do have a vision in my head of Joel Embiid picking Chris Paul up by the jersey and just like wanting to stuff him in a locker when he just yells at him one too many times. It just seems like a personality thing that could be very combustive, but who knows? Joel is also at the point in his career where he's almost 30 years old. I don't think people realize that. I didn't realize that, honestly, until I looked it up. He's 29, so maybe at a different point. All right, Tom Haberstroh is with us. We did not anticipate doing the first 10 minutes on Chris Paul, but, that's the league. Let's talk about the finals. Let's talk about the two teams that actually are still playing. I thought this was going to be a close, competitive series where Denver ultimately went out because they're just better. I have more reservations about that after seeing two games. What did you think at the beginning of the series, and what do you think now of this series?
I had Denver in 6. I've now changed because I'm a coward to Miami in 7. I know we're supposed to do the thing where we have to stick to our guns, and if you make a prediction, but Craig, I just feel like when presented with new information, I'm allowed to pivot because I thought the Denver Nuggets were going to wax them in the first 2 games because of the long layoff that they got and the rest advantage they got, and the fact that the Heat would need some time to adjust to the altitude. And that didn't happen at all. And they kicked their butt in game 1 in the fourth quarter, and they kicked their butt again in the fourth quarter of game 2. And it just seems like they aren't affected at all by the altitude. Their shooting has not had the kind of adverse effect that we thought that we would see at altitude. And this team is one of the best three-point shooting teams we've ever seen in the NBA. It is so weird for me to say that sentence. The Miami Heat, ranked 27th in three-point field goal percentage in the regular season, couldn't hit a shot, couldn't hit water if you threw a rock into Biscayne Bay, and yet here they are with another 17 threes in game 2, 17 of 35. They've made over half their three-pointers 4 times in the postseason, which is as many times as the Golden State Warriors had in their 4 championship postseason runs combined. So the fact that the Miami Heat are playing at the caliber of the greatest shooting team ever in the Splash Brothers and Warriors and matching their unbelievable nuclear shooting in just 1 postseason is just – this is who they are.
Tom, can you repeat that stat again?
Yes. The Miami Heat have made at least 50% of their three-pointers 4 times this postseason. The Golden State Warriors, in their 4 championship runs with Steph Curry and Steve Kerr and Klay Thompson, combined, those 4 championship runs had 4 total such games. The Heat have done that already this postseason.
And they were 27th in the regular season in three-point shooting.
It's insane. It's insane. Like, no matter how – and keep in mind, Game 2, Craig, they didn't shoot 50%. Game 2 did not qualify for that stat. So they're 1 Jimmy Butler three-point miss away from having 5, a league record, 5 nuclear three-point shooting nights in 1 postseason run. And the Golden State Warriors, the greatest three-point shooting team, we can agree, the best collection of shooters ever. They don't really hold a candle to this Miami Heat team in terms of those hot shooting nights. And they're the best three-point shooting team this postseason, and Denver included. And it's just, Eric Spoelstra found all these guys off the scrap heap with his front office, and they move the ball, and they're selfless players. Jimmy Butler is at the fulcrum of that offense, but Bam Adebayo also finding shooters. It's really amazing to watch this underdog story play out in real time. And now that they've stolen home court advantage, I have no choice but to adjust my prognostication and say Heat in 7.
Tom Haberstroh, Meadowlark Media, Basketball Illuminati podcast. Watch the postgame show tonight on the Levitard and Friends YouTube page. Man, I still have Denver in 6, but I don't feel good about it at all. I probably feel better about Denver in 7, but I still don't feel good about it. because of all the things you said. And one of the things that I think is fascinating and kind of goes to that shooting point is it feels like every shot Miami gets is in rhythm. And there's just like it's not a very fast-paced series. I think that's something that's kind of been interesting. Obviously, you are someone who dives into the numbers extremely well, so you know this. Like, the offensive ratings in this series are extraordinarily high. Both teams are actually been being very efficient offensively, but the pace is slower, so the point totals are not as high. But with Miami, it just feels like every shot is in rhythm, and it felt that way against Boston. It felt that way against Milwaukee. It felt that way most of the time against New York as well. How are they able to generate looks that always feel like they're in rhythm? Their players never feel like they're rushed, and that obviously is going to lead to the levels of success that we're talking about.
So, Craig, Michael Porter Jr. at his media availability today just spilled the beans. He said it's been really tough in this series because when we yell out a defensive coverage, they go opposite. So let's say they run a pick and roll. The Miami Heat run a pick and roll. Michael Porter Jr. is the big man defender. Mm-hmm. If he yells out, switch, the Miami Heat are going to slip the pick and not set the pick. Slip the pick meaning the guy who's setting the screen is not really going to set it. He's going to run to the three-point line. And so when you switch, that's the one way you can beat a switch. The Miami Heat are going to blow up that switch and get an open three-pointer. That's why they get so many looks on the three-pointer, because they've been coached so well. They have almost a spontaneous, almost a computer-like processing machine where as soon as the defensive coverage yells out what they're going to do, they already are programming the counter without even saying anything. They know that when the defense says switch, they're going to slip. When the defense says coverage, like basically a straight-up coverage, they're going to set the screen and go the other way. So that doesn't happen in the NBA. You don't have the confidence and the chemistry and the know-how amongst players to know, okay, this is what the defense is going to do. We don't even need to say anything on the offensive end. We already know where we're going to go, and we're going to move these chess pieces around the board, and they're going to be flummoxed. Like Michael Porter Jr. saying that in a press conference during the finals, basically saying the Heat are countering us before we even make our counter, is exactly what we mean when we say Eric Spoelstra is the best coach in the NBA today. And even if even if he doesn't win the championship this year, he's going down as one of the 5 best coaches in NBA history because his players listen, they play hard, and they have the kind of coverage already built into their software system where they're able to counter like they're machines. And that's the thing is like, it's not so much about X's and O's or, coming up with the greatest plays. It's getting players to listen is the hardest thing in the NBA is to get players to listen. And Eric Spoelstra does it better than anybody in the league. The players listen, they buy in, and they do as they're told. And man, it is so cool to watch this group of individuals come together and play out of their minds in the finals.
Was it in one of your profiles back in the Heatles days for ESPN.com that there's the story that basically LeBron was upset? He went into Spo's office and Spo wrote Pat Riley's cell phone on the board and was like, if you're mad, call him. He's going to tell you to come back here and listen to me.
Man, I have so many of those types of stories with LeBron. I mean, LeBron had never played the 4 consistently until Eric Spoelstra convinced him, hey, you suffered a lot in the 2011 finals because you were unwilling to embrace that amazing side of your game. You could be Karl Malone. You could be Steve Nash. You can be Ray Allen. You can be all of those players. Be them all. And so he, sat down LeBron and said, if you want to unlock your full potential and waltz your way to championships, you need to have that in your back pocket, that you can set screens, roll to the basket in the pick and roll, and be a big man. And LeBron James, up until that point, was resistant to that idea. And that was after 2011 NBA Finals, but there were conversations before that about LeBron frustrated about the way the Heat ran practices or the way they ran their business, because keep in mind, LeBron got everything he wanted in Cleveland, including, people on his payroll moving onto the Cavs payroll instead of, him basically taking care of his staff. He put it on the Cavs payroll. And a lot of times Pat Riley and Eric Spoelstra were like, no, we are going to run this the way that we've run it because we know what it takes to win a championship. And that sort of moxie, that sort of charisma, that sort of presence, that power is what Eric Spoelstra has built and Pat Riley has given him, is that ability to stand up to LeBron and say, no. You came here because you wanted to win a championship. This is how we're going to do things. And it's certainly taught LeBron James a lot about, I mean, he calls it college. He went to college to learn what it takes to win a championship in Miami. And so you're seeing it. Jimmy Butler, also the next player, it seems, that is on his way to his first championship under the Heat culture.
Yeah, and just that, to me, that's like the ultimate Spo story. And just like, there's this guy that started in the video room. He's like, no, I'm the head coach. Like, welcome. You're a player. This is how this works. I respect you, but like, there's a power structure here. That is what it is. All right, real quick on the way out. What do they do with Tyler Hero tonight?
I don't think they play him. I think Game 2 win bought them some time. They don't have to be desperate here to get a win down to 0-2 in the series. I actually think that they should hold him out for the entire series. I don't think he's a two-way player. I think he can be targeted as soon as he gets into the game. Defensively, they have two-way players all over their roster in Gabe Vincent, in Caleb Martin. And Duncan Robinson is a totally different player than he was in the regular season, flexing on guys, blocking shots, playing smart defense. I just think that with a gimpy hand for a score, that's a problem in of itself. But Tyler Hero is much better in 82 games and in the first 2 rounds of the playoffs than he is at this stage of the finals. I think it's smarter for the Miami Heat to hold him out and ride the guys that got you here. And I think this is just, it's a little too late. If I'm the Miami Heat and Eric Spoelstra, the Tyler Hero button is, I wouldn't press it.
Yeah, I tend to agree with you on that. At least not tonight. Like, if things go badly, you can always still press it later, but we'll see. Tom, this was great. I'm so happy we could connect again. So great to have you on, and let's do it again here soon, whether later in the finals, depending on how long this thing goes, or as we head towards free agency and the draft.
You got it, buddy.
All right, that's Tom Haberstroh, everybody. Make sure you watch him and Amino Hassan, Levitard and Friends YouTube page for their post-game show tonight. Always entertaining, always thoughtful. 2 of the smartest basketball guys talking about hoop. And then the Basketball Illuminati podcast as well from Meadowlark Media. Very much appreciate Tom's time. All right, when we get back here on the Hoffman Show, it is time, 6 o'clock on a Wednesday. We dive deep into the interwebs. It is time for Never Read the Comments next. It's the Hoffman Show on the Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app. Anthony Haney, sir, do you feel like you're over the hump? Do you that hour open? I just have questions now because we're into the final hour here on a Wednesday. How are you feeling?
Oh, I'm feeling fantastic.
Okay, that's good. I'm glad that you are feeling fantastic. Are you feeling fearless?
I think so.
Okay, that's good. That's good. Because it's the time of the show where we do something dangerous. Where we throw caution to the wind.
Yes, sir.
Where we take all the advice that people give us about how we should conduct ourselves online and who we should and shouldn't pay attention to, and we ball it up, throw it out the window. Anthony, what are we going to do?
Mr. Craig Hoffman, sir,
Mm-hmm.
the fellow audience out there, what we're about to do is read those comments, baby.
Yes. Yes, we are. The comments that you, the listening audience, the viewing audience, have left at youtube.com/@CraigHoffman, at youtube.com/@theteam980. And who knows, Anthony, we might get crazy because we do post episodes, the full ones, of Take Command on youtube.com/@1067thefan. We might even read a couple of those. However, start with some comments that were left on a Take Command episode, the most recent Take Command episode on my YouTube page, a clip that we posted about Sam Howell and Jacoby Brissett. Just simply talking about comparing the two performances. You know, at that point, we had seen about 5 practices. Well, 6. Yeah, 6 practices. We recorded this Tuesday before minicamp began. And Dennis said, and by the way, Dennis, late edition. Just an hour ago, this comment came through. So we really do check until the last possible second. But Dennis says, any Washington fan that thinks Sam Howell is going to be the starter the whole year with Brissett behind him and the coaching staff's job is on the line, you're not paying attention. I hope I'm wrong, but we'll see. I don't think that's the case necessarily, but I do think it's a more relevant point than a lot of people are giving credence to. If we get to August and Sam Howell is not progressing at the rate that he should, or let's not even say the rate that he should, because that implies it's about just Sam. Oh, he's a 5th-round pick in his second year. Okay, let's pretend he was a 3rd-round pick so we can just skip all over those comments about, well, they had him higher. Let's say he was a 3rd-round pick in his second year, and you were invested in him as the future of the franchise. That trajectory, you could look as like, okay, he's growing, but we're going to have some growing pains, and all right, we're just going to live with them because it's better in the long term. This coaching staff ain't going to be about that life, especially if Jacoby Brissett will be able to produce at a consistently higher level. And if this defense starts cooking and the only reason they're not winning games is because Sam Howell turns the football over, then yeah, that's going to be a problem. So if they get to August and they think that's going to be the case, they could also try to keep splitting reps, eventually give Brissett the job, and then hope that Howell is ready by October to take over the job, and he's gotten better, but he's not ready week 1. I would say that is a more likely scenario that he – actually, I don't know. Anthony, what do you think? More likely that Howell starts the season and gets benched or starts on the bench and then overtakes Brissett? That's a fun question.
I think it's more likely that he starts the season before getting benched. Again, this is a must-win season for Ron.
Yeah, you're probably right.
He has, positioned Sam to be the guy. And also, us only having 2 preseason games doesn't necessarily, help Jacoby to an extent. Well, maybe it could.
The thing is they've got the 3. They'll probably only use 2, like you're saying. But the joint practices are everything. If they get to those joint practices, here's the most likely situation of like when they decide. They get to the joint practices, they're still a little unsure, right? If Sam comes out and crushes it, amazing. If Sam comes out and stinks, okay, well, we go into those joint practices with Jacoby splitting reps anyway. But let's say they're kind of on the fence. Joint practices come. That's it. Those 2 practices will determine who the starting quarterback is week 1. If Sam does what he needs to do, they'll keep investing in him. They'll live with some of his mistakes. They'll get through it. If he's bad, if they're like, oh, God, against a defense that doesn't know what's coming and he's got to react to, he doesn't know what they're doing, he's less familiar, he ain't ready, and Baltimore is obviously going to come in very disciplined, like it's Baltimore. We know what that organization's about. And he's bad, like Jacoby will be the starter. And again, like I think for the success of the team, the winning and losing, either one's going to be an okay option. But the higher ceiling is obviously Sam. And also that gives you a plan for the future. So I hope that it works out that way for them. And I could do without a quarterback controversy. I'm hoping that Sam continues to just grow and learn and get better, and we don't have any, like, he's not going to play 17 great games, because who does? But I hope that he generally is good, and I think that's very much still on the table.
Yeah, when late July rolls around, early August, as long as he has that playbook, ingrained, and like he has a better understanding, I think our safe bet is going to be Sam moving forward. Right now, a lot of people are, freaking out that he's sort of kind of has some good days, some bad days. Like, it's June, though. It's early.
Yeah.
If this was October or September, I would be very concerned.
Yeah. Domo Skywalker says, here y'all go with the BS media, and y'all fans are just going to eat it right on up. Shaking my head. Now here come the start Jacoby Brissett comments. We did the most nuanced, like, hey, this is the context of it conversation. I knew we were going to get comments like this. People can't help themselves. They feast, like, our job is to talk about the information that we have. That's all we can do. We can't, and then like kind of project it forward. But like, we can't create information. The best we can do is what we just did. Like, if this, then that. If that, then this. And so I don't know what you want us to talk about this time of year. I don't know how else to do this. It's not just for drama or speculation. It's just like, hey, we're people talking sports. And that's what happens this time of year. But to the substance of what we're talking about, yeah, I think what you said is 100% accurate. Because like I was saying with Scott earlier, the play calling is going to be a massive factor here, and we're not even talking about that at all right now. Like, they're running everything right now in the pass game. Well, what happens when they create a game plan that's a ton of screens, a ton of RPOs, a ton of quick game, the stuff that Sam does well mixed in with some play action shots and an effective run game? Like, that's what this offense is going to look like. It's not what it looks like right now, because they have to get all the component parts and not in the percentages and dosages that they're going to do it in an actual game. P says, I mean, in the past, media said a player has had the best camp ever and should be a breakout in the regular season, but they flop really bad, so hopefully he learns and balls out in the regular season. And that's the thing. Like, this is also the time of year where guys try stuff, or guys try stuff either way. They try to be super conservative and don't take any risks, and that leads to guys not producing in the regular season because they've not tested their limits and they don't know where the line is of where they actually need to be to perform. And then, obviously, you see the opposite, I think, especially at the quarterback position, although I would say a guy like Brissett not necessarily doing this, but there's some stuff where I think Hal just is like, let me try this. Let me see what I can get away with. Oh, that works. Oh, that did it. And that's part of playing in the regular season. And that's why sometimes I think EB lives with the mistakes, and he's like, all right, we'll just see. They talk through it, and everything's fine. There's other times where EB is ready to bite Sam's head off, and you're like, well, that probably wasn't an allowable mistake based off how he reacted to that. So that's the nature of May. That's the nature of June. And last time I checked, look at the bottom of the computer screen, 6/7/2023. It is indeed still June. John says, I've been saying since Jacoby got here that I wouldn't be surprised if he takes the QB1. He's a good player, and it's his time. Sam will shine and has time on his side. Future is bright. I pulled this comment because I think it's an interesting thought. Doesn't it feel, Anthony, like it's this or never for Sam Howell? Like, not that he's going to be out of the league, but I think that if Sam doesn't win, like, this is the best chance that Sam's probably ever going to have to start outside of injury. Either he's going to prove, like, yep, he's the man, or he's going to be the backup here until his contract runs out, and then he will either stay here or go somewhere else and continue to be a backup. It is not common, and I know what people are going to say. Go ahead, leave your comment about how Sam Howell was the number one guy after his junior year on that one CBS draft board, and they had a higher grade on him and whatever. He ultimately was a 5th-round pick, and picks that are not first and second rounders typically do not get multiple chances to start in the NFL, certainly when they are outliers like Sam Howell, who is much, much smaller than the prototypical NFL size. It does feel like the future, I understand the future is bright kind of comment because of his talent, but it does feel like it's this or never for Howell, which is crazy because it's year 2, but am I wrong there?
I don't think you're wrong at all.
I don't take joy in saying that. It's just I think that's the reality.
Yeah, I mean, it's because he's also just been hyped up for the last 5 months. Ever since we beat Dallas in Week 18, but it's also, I think, us just having high expectations for him off that game. I think you look at Jarrett Stidham and what he did for the Raiders against the 49ers last year, where he lit the number one passing defense up, and everybody was like, oh, my God. Could he be a potential, starting quarterback in the league, for someone else? And then he goes out the next week and loses to the Rams and Baker Mayfield. So it's more so, I think, everybody being anxious to see, what Sam Howell will do with a full offseason and, 18 weeks in front of him, as opposed to, just going off that one Dallas game. I think it's just us, being impatient, to be honest.
Yeah, no, I agree. Impatience is a Washington football fan specialty. Oh, it would have been so much funnier if I hadn't stumbled over it. Whatever. Hit the button. Come on. Do it. Oh, is this just not going to work at all today? Cool.
Is your board up?
No, it's frozen. There's supposed to be a sound effect here that went, "We are the Commanders," from the Doug Williams press conference, and my board apparently is frozen. That's a good thing to know now before I try to do real things later. Do you have my board up? Can you hit that sound effect?
I don't have
you don't have that one up. Well, insert the Price is Right bum bum ba-dum sound here, and on to the comments we go. This is Never Read the Comments on the Hoffman Show, Team 980, always live on the free Odyssey app, streaming live on YouTube, youtube.com/@theteam980. Anthony, say hi to the internet. All right, EB, this is from Wilford. How many people have you ever met named Wilford?
Not many.
Not many. Wilford, shout out to you. EB brings a sense of urgency that Washington desperately needs after 20-plus years of mediocrity. Hopefully it translates in official games. This on the changes, kind of my observations of Bieniemy last week at practice, my first day out there. And I think, yes, on the urgency front, and that is coupled with an attention to detail that I think is very different than what they've had here. And there are just not players on the roster that have experienced this. I would imagine if you asked Terry about his time at Ohio State under Urban Meyer, who obviously was a fantastic flaming failure in the NFL, but very successful in college and had a high standard in the whole deal, that this might feel a little more familiar to that or to John Allen and what they experienced at Alabama, et cetera, et cetera. But this is the highest level of coaching, and it combines we must do it right, and we must do it right now. And that is, I think, a little different. I think that there is a time and a place for some of this. Some things as a coach you have to put in your back pocket and be like, we'll discuss that in the meeting room. We don't have time right now. It's not the most effective way. Some things need to get corrected right now. And I think Bieniemy's very, very good at deciding what's what, or doing it multiple times, reinforcing what he says on the practice field in the meeting room. But I think it's just the general attention to detail that if it's not exactly right for no good reason, we're going to do it again and we're going to get it right because there's no good reason that we didn't get it right in the first place. And I think that's a pretty powerful thing that Eric Bieniemy embodies. On Ron Rivera delegating more than ever, the true Obelus, Obelus, O-B-E-L-U-S, the true insert word here, commented and said, Ron isn't a great coach, but he's not stupid, and I'm impressed by his ability to set aside his ego. Finding smarter people than him to run the defense and an offense may allow him to keep his job. I agree with this comment. I don't think Ron Rivera is a spectacular NFL football coach. He obviously was very successful for a long time as defensive coordinator in multiple spots. He has been a very solid NFL head coach. His record in Carolina is what it is, only 3 winning seasons. Some of those, though, were spectacular and just a lot of kind of hovering right around 500 type of years in both Carolina and now in Washington. But he's also not dumb. He has moments where I have no idea what he's talking about, but I have moments where I have no idea what I'm talking about. Most of you also have moments where you have no idea what I'm talking about. But with Rivera, there is a humility that I think is impressive, especially considering he was gifted all of this power. And not just, I shouldn't say gifted. He was given all of this power by Dan Snyder that came with a lot of money and the idea that he was the savior. And to have that put on you and to, on some level, because you accepted the job, believe it, and then eventually go, hey, I might not have all the answers here that I thought I did. I got to start bringing in different people. I think does take a level of humility, does take a level of healthy ego, as in your ego's in a healthy place. And it probably takes some level of reality check where he knows the score now. The same guy that gave him all that power ain't the guy that's going to be running the team, depending on how this New York meeting went today, within the next couple of weeks. So he's got to make sure that he can go to Josh Harris and be like, yeah, no, I made some mistakes in these couple of years, but we're on a really good path now, and I'd appreciate it if you let me run out this ground ball and continue forward on it. Whether he winds up staying as head coach, whether he moves into a front office role is, I would say mostly probably fans have speculated, but like with enough reason, right, with enough logical thought that it's not a crazy idea. So I do think that Ron deserves some credit. There's a little bit arsonist fireman to it, for sure, but he deserves the credit, and on a human level, to have the humility to do that, I think is a good job by him. And, while still having lots of questions about how this all works out, we can applaud him in the moment for that particular good thing. Last but not least, some Wizards thoughts real quick. We had our instant reaction to the Wizards hiring Will Dawkins as GM. Again, if you missed that, check out the video on YouTube, on my page. And remember, tomorrow we will be broadcasting live on the Team 980 for the Wizards introductory press conferences for Michael Winger and Will Dawkins. Noon is when they start here on the Team 980. Then we will have Chris Russell and I on site to do 2-on-1 interviews with Winger, with Travis Schlenk. I think I'm going to sit down with Wes on the side that will air on our show. So lots of coverage of that tomorrow. I'm going to say between 1 and 7 here on the Team 980 for those of you who watch this stuff live. Obviously, if you're watching later on YouTube, go back and check it out because it's probably on YouTube at this point. There we go. I don't know how to pronounce this person's handle, so sorry. But I love this from a Wizards fan. Optimism, actual optimism. We fired Tommy Shepard. We didn't promote Anton Jamison or Amber Nichols or any one of Ted's golfing buddies. Winger, Dawkins, and Schlenk all in the front office. As I said at the time, 3 dudes who could have been the top guy here, and they got all 3 of them. That is epic. Fantastic job. No guarantees it'll work because guarantees don't exist in sports moving forward. All you can do is guarantee that you did the best job that you could right now, and damn, they did a good one. And Edward says, only this is a good little rim shot to end on, Anthony. You ready for this? The only person that can make the Wizards into a winner is Ted Lasso. It's funnier when you laugh into a microphone that's on.
Lo siento.
Yeah, I know we're doing a lot of video, but we're still a radio show.
We are indeed.
Yeah. For the record, Anthony did laugh. He just laughed silently. Have you watched Ted Lasso?
I haven't watched much of it, but I know the reference.
Yeah. Of course, everyone knows the reference. We have got like 4 or 5 episodes left. We kind of are waiting to binge them of the final season. So, apropos of nothing. Well, I guess apropos of that comment. All right, if you would like to leave a comment, youtube.com/@CraigHoffman, youtube.com/@TheTeam980. Full episodes of Take Command, youtube.com/@1067. The Fan. Next here on the radio, preview tonight's Game 3 of the NBA Finals and ask, is the winner of tonight's game going to win the series? Ooh! That's next. It's the Hoffman Show on the Team 980, always alive as well on the free Odyssey app and on YouTube, youtube.com/@theteam980. All right, time to talk a little bit about the NBA Finals tonight and what's trending. By the way, we will have a long list of events around the nation that got postponed tonight due to the smoke. Certainly interested to see if the Commanders have practice tomorrow. And I have to think if they do, it's indoors. And the Nats game, we're scheduled to go on tonight, but we'll get to that more in what's trending. Also, if you were listening to the last segment, I'm happy to report that we now have the board working. Very important. Very important. That gets a giggle out of Anthony every time. Yeah. Yeah.
We are the Commanders.
That's what I wanted to hit.
Do you understand the words that are coming out of my mouth?
And this was me when we had the board, not fire. Or perhaps it was the... I still laugh every time at Aisha yelling at him in the background of that one. Hey, the baby's sleeping, you big doofus, Steph Curry. All right, tonight, NBA Finals, Game 3. Anthony, hot take sports radio / debate, embrace it question. Does the winner of Game 3 win the series?
It's a great question, actually.
It's really not, because there's no way to know the answer.
Yeah, I don't know.
I'm sure there's some statistic that says, X% of the time.
Oh, for sure.
Whatever.
Just like the Game 5 winner, there's like a 80% chance or something.
Yeah, which makes sense because if you win Game 5, you're probably up in the series 3-2, and thus you have to win one more game. That math be mathin'.
Yes,
as we're fond of saying on this show. I'll say this: I actually think the answer is going to be no, because I think Miami's going to win tonight and Denver's going to win the series. I don't feel very good about either of those things. I think there's a really good chance they split these games. I don't know what the order ultimately will be, and then it becomes a 3-game series, and 2 of those games are in Denver. At that point, they've got the home court advantage back. But the idea that you're going to beat this Denver team 4 out of 6, which is what Miami had to do, they've already got one of them after losing Game 1, is just, it seems hard. Like, Denver's so good. And like I said when we talked about, kind of breaking down Game 2, Denver has the answers available to them. I think that's what's so frustrating. Miami is excellent. They are so smart. They are and watching them play is even growing on me because I just so appreciate the intelligence with which they play basketball. I think there are simple truths that they understand about the game. And the story that Haberstroh told earlier about how, I guess Michael Porter told the story in the press conference, that it's automatic. Miami runs a pick and roll. Denver communicates, what you're always told to do. Switch. Well, Miami automatically diverts and does the thing that beats a switch. Why doesn't every team do that? That's genius. But no one else does. They understand that by playing zone, yes, there's certain things they're going to give up, but they can take away all of the mismatches. Because at the end of the day, yes, Nikola Jokic might wind up being guarded by Gabe Vincent, but it's not going to happen in a switch where he gets buried in the post. It's going to happen on the perimeter. And they can make sure that it's Bam on him in the post, and that's the best option that they have. They don't let Jamal Murray post up their smaller guards because he's not, the smaller guards are out on the perimeter. So it takes them out of their pick and roll game. There's just simple truths, and I don't know that they fully understood all of them. Some of them may become quickly apparent to them in that fourth quarter of Game 1 where they did win the quarter and did some serious damage playing zone. But they also do other smart things where they'll unleash an offensive set they haven't used all series to start the fourth quarter, and that's how Duncan Robinson got his 10 points the other night. So there's so much to what Miami's doing that I appreciate. But at the end of the day, Denver, talent-wise, has the answers for all of it. And that, to me, tonight is going to tell me a lot about the series because either Denver's going to show they have the ability and the intelligence to adjust, or whether they win or not, it's another tight game, and we just know this is going to come down to making or missing shots. And at that point, good luck predicting anything.
How much of this series, I guess, has come down to just flat out coaching? would you say?
That's tough.
Because I wouldn't say the Nuggets are necessarily getting out coached.
I agree.
Because Mike Malone alluded to it. He was saying, like, he needed his team to, have a little bit more effort, and, he needed them to go a little bit harder, and he called them out after game 2. So I don't necessarily think it's a coaching thing. It's more so, like, everybody knows Denver's the more talented team. They have, a great two-man going on with Jokic and Jamal Murray. And it just, they just couldn't put everything together down the stretch of the game like Miami did.
So I can't believe I'm doing this because I feel like such a sucker, but I kind of feel like it's not Michael Malone's fault, and the evidence of that is he was so mad at his team after game 2. It's like that to me was a coach who tried and couldn't get his players to do the things that he was trying to get them to do.
Yep.
And on some level, that's always on the coach because just knowing the answers isn't good enough. You have to be able to communicate them away to your team that they actually execute it. But some of the problems they're having are reading the game and, like, they're in the right position. They make the wrong decision. And if that's the case, like, that's on the players. He can't play for them. He can't make decisions for them. All he can do is put them in the best positions to succeed and hope that it goes well. And if he's telling them, like, hey, pick and roll coverage, we're going to do this. Hey, the zone offense, this is how we're going to go. Because, again, like I talked about this with Haberstroh, Denver in game 2, their offensive rating, let's just use points per possession. They're 1.26 points per possession, right? So 126 offensive rating. 1.26 points per possession is an NBA best in the regular season type of efficient offense. You do that over the course of 82 games, you are the best offense in the league by a mile. But they gave up 129, and thus they lose by 3 points, right? So can they speed the game up? Can they do things that, Michael Malone can get on the sideline and be like, let's go, guys, let's go. But, like, ultimately they have to execute at a higher level, and especially on the defensive end, to speed Miami up. And that's hard to do because Miami's comfortable with 3 on the shot clock. They don't do the dumb stuff, the desperate stuff that other teams do. And on some level, I don't know what the solution is to that other than to just bludgeon them. Like, you just have to find ways to take the things that they're doing and render them moot. You have to say, okay, Jamal Murray, you're not getting the mismatches the way we used to. We got to find new ways to get you mismatches. I think there is something to that, and I know he got real snappy about this with Ramona Shelburne, but, like, when Spo was asked about making Jokic a scorer instead of a distributor, like, I think there's something to that. I think there's something to breaking the rhythm of the game. The beautiful kind of passing the ball around, getting quick buckets, fast-paced game the Nuggets play. Miami's discipline has taken them out of that. And they've got to they're not going to be able to do it for 48 minutes, but they've got to find ways to get out in transition, which involves getting stops, because I think that's the other side of that coin, right, Anthony, is like, okay, how do you play at a faster pace? You get stops, you off missed shots, off turnovers, you can get out in transition. I just told you they gave up 129 points over the course of 100 possessions, in terms of offensive rating. They gave up 1.29 points per possession. That tells me that there's a lot of made shots and a lot of free throws. And that's going to be the key for Denver tonight is to, you got to force misses, rebound well, and go. And it's just a hard task against Miami because they're so disciplined and know exactly who they are and exactly what they want to do.
I think also for Denver, you have to put Miami away. Again, to start both games, they've gotten out to huge leads only to have Miami hang around. And it's sort of like what the Celtics did a little bit in their series with the Heat, where they would get up, let Miami hang around, and then Miami will come back. They're good at, weathering storms, playing, cool, and then, being able to, execute later on in the second half. That is exactly what they do extremely well. And last game, they had the fourth quarter of all fourth quarters, to be honest. They were so good when it came down to an execution standpoint. So I think for Denver, it's more so about, putting this team away, not fouling, 3-point shooters with 1 second on the shot. And KCP did that a couple of times, or, fouling Jimmy Butler on a pump fake and things of that nature. So they just got to be a little bit more disciplined, put the team away, and then also get out in transition.
I said this on, I guess it was Monday when we talked about Game 2. Typically, defenses the caliber of the Denver Nuggets do not win NBA championships, and the reason is they're not detailed enough. They're not locked in enough, and that showed in many facets, but especially on the defensive end. They've got to, just for 3 games, they have to 3 times lock it in, and if they do that, they're NBA champions because they're gonna score. If they don't, they're gonna be on the wrong end of the biggest upset in the history of the league.
And it's for 48 minutes. You can't just do it, 12 minutes. You got to do it for 48 minutes because that other team, the Miami Heat, they locked in for 48 minutes.
Yeah. A really good point by you that Denver was up 15. Like, which team is it? Is it the team that goes up 15? And that, by the way, they also went up 15 with Jokic on the bench, which was wild. Normally, those are the minutes that, like, decide the game. And it's like, okay, Can Miami make up enough ground in those non-Jokic minutes? And it was the other way around. And yet, with Jokic on the floor, they were able to come back, which is another interesting thing I'm watching tonight. The Kevin Love minutes, Miami played extremely well. And remember, Denver's starters is the best lineup in the league by a mile this year. Like, talk about a 5-man lineup. Who's the best? It's them. The top 4 guys in plus-minus in the NBA this year were Denver Nuggets. It was Jokic and then, like, I think Murray, Gordon, and then KCP. Like, when Jokic is on the floor, he makes your team significantly better than whoever you were playing. That was the entire regular season's worth of data that they had. And in Game 2, Miami won those minutes. That is enormous. And if that happens again tonight, I do think Denver is in a bit of trouble. So first 5-6 minutes of the game, huge tonight to see how Miami comes out. Do they get, like, in terms of what to watch for? Obviously, who wins those minutes? Does Denver adjust? And then does Miami continue to get the same easy looks from 3? If they do, Denver's in trouble. If Denver can tighten the screws, I think they're in good shape to still win this series. All right, we get back. We will do Real Things Real People Said into real microphones. But first, a look at what's trending and updates from all around the Northeast on all this just insane wildfire situation, air quality that we're dealing with. It's the Hoffman Show. Team 980 always live as well on the free Odyssey app. Team 980's YouTube page as well. All right, time for Real Things Real People Said into Real Microphones. Anthony, in the rundown, I guess housekeeping first. In the rundown tomorrow, we should probably circle back to some of the Montez Sweat and Jahan Dotson sound. We wound up going long with Haberstroh because of the Chris Paul stuff. In case you're just tuning in, Chris Paul waived by the Phoenix Suns. Talked about it with Tom Haberstroh at 5:30, as well as a great NBA Finals preview. So highly recommend the rewind feature when we're done. If you just you're looking for something else to listen to on the ride home, BetMGM tonight is great. Haberstroh was amazing. I'll take it up with Ashu. Okay, if you think Nick's gonna be mad at you, you tell Nick to come talk to me. So we should probably circle back to some of the Montez Sweat and Jahan Dotson sound tomorrow. But obviously tomorrow will be a very heavy Wizards day. Michael Winger getting introduced, Will Dawkins getting introduced. We will have interviews, I believe, in some form or fashion with both of them. I will be at the press conference as well. So looking forward to that. Hoping Ted Leonsis, he's going to be at the press conference. We'll see what kind of extended conversations we can have with him. I'm going to try to sit down with Wes Unseld tomorrow as well and Travis Schlenk. So lots to do tomorrow, lots of interviews. You're definitely going to want to subscribe to the YouTube page as well, youtube.com/@theteam980 and youtube.com/@Craig Hoffman. Okay, that's all the housekeeping. Time to get real, as in Real Things Real People Said, into real microphones.
Real things.
We're not gonna be sucked this year.
Real people.
5 and 11, not very good.
Said into real microphones.
The culture is actually damn good.
All right, Anthony, you're pumped about this. You're so excited about this, and I will tell a quick story. So I'm going to Vegas at the end of the month. And at first, Anthony thought the fight between Errol Spence and Terrence Crawford was going to be when I was in Vegas. And Anthony was very jealous, and I was terrified. Because I was like, Vegas is going to be a zoo. I'm not going for the fight. I do not behoove anyone who is, except for I don't want to be there in the midst of this chaos. I'm going to see my friend who happens to play WNBA basketball. Get out of my way. Luckily, though, for me, it's July 29th. Anthony misheard me, not June 29th. But here's your first official trailer for Errol Spence and Terrence Crawford in Vegas. July 29th.
Errol Spence Jr. is one of the best boxers on planet Earth. And down goes Kell Brook. Errol Spence with some sweet combinations.
He is the winner by technical knockout.
You've got the 3 belts. What's next?
And now the unified welterweight champion of the world.
Everybody know who I want next. I want Terrence Crawford next.
I do believe this is the perfect time. You got 2 great fighters in their prime for all the marbles. It's going to be an exciting fight. I just can't wait for it to happen.
That's the fight we all want to see.
There's been a back and forth a lot with you and Bud Crawford.
I don't know your number. Save it.
I want all the smoke. But right now, I'm looking at Terrence Crawford.
This is for Undisputed. This is a big moment for not only myself, but for Errol Spence Jr.
Saturday, July 29th, they're going to crown the first 4-belt Undisputed champion in 147-pound history.
The wait is over. Watch me fry this fish.
Yeah, I know what time it is, baby. Terrence, I'm coming for that motherfucking belt.
Oh. Suddenly, Anthony, even I'm ready. What was that?
I'm excited.
That was your excited dance? At first, I was like, is he boxing? Is he dancing?
Is
he trying to pull his overalls up?
It was, some uppercuts to the bodies. Woo! I'm tired.
Hand speed wasn't bad.
Thank you.
Form was terrible. Hand speed, not bad. Speaking of fights, Ramona Shelburne, our friend from ESPN, and Eric Spoelstra in a fight after Spo got a little bit testy on one of Ramona's questions the other day.
Look, first of all, Eric Spoelstra and I are fine. We talked after the game. He watched that clip back and texted me this morning saying, sorry, I don't know why I said that. It was fine. In the heat of the moment after a game like that, when things are intense, people say things and nothing is personal, especially during this time of year, during the finals.
Good for Ramona and good for Spo. I used to, hope I'm not spilling beans out of turn here. Tim McMahon, who's with ESPN, who's blown up. Awesome. Love it. Love that for Tim. But when I was working with Tim in Dallas, like he was mostly just doing Dallas stuff. Like he was the Mavs guy, not like the NBA Southwest guy like he is now. And he used to get just rocked by Rick Carlisle in press conferences. Because Carlisle loved to do it, and he knew what he was doing. He did it to Tim on purpose, and then he called Tim back into Rick's office, and they'd talk about it and have a chuckle and move on with their lives. And that was just kind of their relationship. Which, if you know Tim and you know Rick Carlisle's personality, makes all the sense in the world. These things happen. They're competitors, but I do think it's good to, like, once you're out of the heat of the competition in the moment, to be a human. Good job, Ramona. Good job, Spo. All have a chuckle and a laugh. Huge day tomorrow. Make sure you're locked in all day for Wizards coverage. See you then on Team 980.
The Hoffman Show. You gotta hear it.
What the Wizards